Well, hi, it's Marianne Goldweber, spiritual teacher, professional medium, owner of a Village Personal and Spiritual Development Center, coming to you live tonight from my spiritual video podcast called Marianne's House. And once again, we're on Marianne's patio. This weather's just beautiful today. It's a little humid, but not too bad. Anyway, I just wanted to connect with you tonight and give you a little inspiration. And, I always sit with whatever the universe suggests to me in my morning meditation. And it was interesting because, it sent me down a kind of rabbit hole of looking things up so that I'm clear about what they were trying to say or mean or whatever. So anyway, pull up your chair, grab your cuppa, your favorite beverage, and your notebook, and join me tonight. So we won't be on here long. This is a very deep dive, and it's something that I address in a lot of the classes, but we're going to talk tonight is about your comfort zone and what that means, and how we can expand our world, And for me, I always start with the origin of things, because it helps me understand, like, where did this come from? And then how has it changed through time? So that is one of my hobbies, which is etymology. Okay, so the origin of words. So I actually wrote that down, so I just wanted to read it to you. So the word comfort, okay? Comfort means a state of physical or mental ease, free from pain, worry, or suffering. Okay? And so to provide that for someone else as an action, it would mean to soothe or console someone in distress. So that's what the word comfort means. Now, the word zone, okay, is interesting because its origin was from the Latin zona, meaning belt or girdle, okay? Something that confines you, okay, or restricts you. But now, as it's evolved through history, that word zone means a dedicated area, okay, dedicated to a specific event or a specific action, or a region, but it's still a limited place. So yes, so now we put comfort and zone together, which would mean that, our comfort zone is a place where we feel comforted and we feel a state of mental ease or safety or away from pain or suffering. So that isn't just a place, okay? That can also be a way of thinking as well. And, so when I look at things holistically, okay, that's a physical, an emotional, mental, and a spiritual perspective. And so anytime that anything outside of that area, okay, can make people uncomfortable, okay? And so having comfort or having a place where you feel comfortable is very important. That's where we get respite. That's where we recharge. That's where we are in familiar surroundings, and it helps us, kind of fill up, Well, it can, but we're going to get to that later. And so that's our hub, some people that's their home, but we all have these places where we find comfort, So anyway, so some people zone, like for me, okay, I'm pretty comfortable outside of just my own living space or my own environment. But that's because I've been way outside of it in lots of different places. So my comfort zone is bigger, I think, on some level, whether that's mentally or emotionally. And again, I can find comfort in other places too, besides just my own house, So anyway, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight, because the universe operates outside of that, okay? They're kind of calling you out to come and do things, okay? So how that manifests is, it's like, you get an invitation and your inner knowing says, that'd be fun. Maybe we should go to that, and or we do or we don't, okay? But the universe is always calling us outside to show us something different, to create an experience with, how we see things, how we physically experience things, or how we feel about things that are outside of what we might know. And this is where the challenge occurs, okay? So we went through a period, and we're kind of still in it, but coming out of it a bit, is this period of isolation, okay? So we went through that whole COVID thing, and everybody got forced into isolation in their house and their certain environments. And so we got kind of comfy, being in our house all the time versus being out there ripping and running and doing whatever we wanted to do, because that wasn't possible, and so we were limited for a long time, okay, and some people more than others, but and then we've got all this upheaval going on in our world, which is making people skittish about going out into the world, and we're being fed a lot of stuff on whether it's social media or TV or whatever you get your information from, that's kind of generating this fear of things happening out there that make us, again, more afraid to leave our environments or to go out into the world in general. And, those things are happening on some level, but not in the degree that, that we're being shown, okay? So, so we all have this, this thing where, our comfort zone can be a refuge, a place away that's, safe, that we can regroup. But that can also be not good, okay? And that can be a prison of sorts, because nothing grows in your comfort zone necessarily, okay? So being challenged and seeing other perspectives and having different experiences that are outside of your normal, okay, is really powerful, but it takes a willingness to be able to, see those things differently, or go and have these experiences that, might make you feel uncomfortable. Oh, that's funny. There's a rabbit. Fear. Rabbit represents fear. That's hilarious. Anyway, so sometimes fear keeps us from, wanting to go out and be on adventures or and I'm not talking about, giant road trips or things like that. It was interesting when I was a kid, our family had this norm that went on in our house, okay, and in our lives. And it wasn't until I actually went to someone else's house, okay, and this didn't really happen that much at that time. This is back in the 60s and 70s. So yeah, sleepovers weren't quite a thing yet, as much as they were. But I went over to a friend's house one afternoon and evening, and it was interesting because I had two parents. I had four siblings. I was the oldest, so it was pandemonium a lot. But anyway, so when I got to go to my little friend's house, who invited me over after school, her mom was a single mom, and she happened to be off after 3:00. And so, going to her house, it was very different because she was an only child, and it was just her and her mom, and it was so peaceful. And her mom, made cookies and gave us a snack, and, and that did not go on in our house. It was kind of like every man for himself kind of thing. But it was interesting because I thought, wow, I love the energy here. There's no yelling, there's no chaos. It's just peaceful, And so having that different perspective that other people don't live the same way I do, that was the first indication that I ever got of that. But it also made me very curious about a lot of things, because our world was so small, and isolated in a way. And so when I got home, I was like, wow, this is a polar, in my little brain at the time. I think I was like 8, 9, or 10 years old. And it was just interesting because I realized that, some people live peacefully. Some people don't have trauma and chaos going on all the time. That you can go to your room and be by yourself. You don't have to share your stuff with someone else. Like, that was like new for me. So anyway, it was just interesting. So just having that one experience outside my norm brought me a much different understanding of some things. Now, I've reflected on these things, okay? So I'm just telling you this from a reflective perspective as an adult, But back then I just thought, wow, no, people don't live like that, Some people live differently, So when I got home, it was glaringly obvious, the difference, So I was always looking for, in my own life, I love learning new things, and I always liked creating new experiences, even though I was very insecure at the time. I was also, I like getting excited about something new. I got excited about trying new things, so I was much more adventuresome, and also because I didn't want to be at home all the time either. So I would go to the library, or I would, ride my bike, all over the place, or, hang out with my siblings and friends and do those things, outside of our house and family unit, And so anyway, so that's kind of, what happens when we see new things. It generates a shift in our thinking. And it's like, even though we may not know or know, that just having that new experience helps the universe inspire you. So when you see something different, the universe goes, oh, you could do that. Or, you can pursue that. And this is why when we hang out with different people who've had different life experiences than we have, it gives us a much more broad understanding of things. And again, I'm risky, so sometimes when people are with me, they get excited, not anxious, about the adventure of life, because again, guys, the other side, they're done. And they don't want us living limited. They want us adventuring, and they want us experiencing this life. Quite often it's because they didn't do those things in their life. And so, sometimes we choose to stay with what's familiar because there's no risk there, okay? You know the animal. So whether that is familiar in a good way or in a bad way, sometimes we get tolerant to pain because it's familiar, and we at least know how that operates. Whereas going out into the world, there's a bit of a risk with that, okay? And because you don't have maybe the experience or the tools or whatever to navigate what you might experience out there, So it takes practice. It takes practice, because it was so funny. My son was actually at a music camp one time with Magic Dick from Jay Giles. And Dick did his presentation. And he said, you never grow in your comfort zone. And that stuck with my son so much. And again, our life was always saying yes to opportunities, showing up in places, taking those risks. But they weren't really risks, because again, the more you do this, the more confident you get. The more you change the way you see it, everything starts to change. I always say, the universe isn't going to come up and, you're hungry, you want food, so you order DoorDash, okay? So it's the pizza guy ding-dongs your doorbell. Okay, that's not how the universe works. They don't use DoorDash, okay? And frankly, the meal you get from the DoorDash guy, okay, is not the same as going to a restaurant and having a meal, okay? It's very different because you're in the energy of the restaurant. You're eating food that was prepared in a maybe slower, better way. And so everything has a little more depth to it, And so sometimes we just get so used to that comfort that we don't realize that it's not necessarily healthy, And again, half of this life and what we leave behind is not the things or the money it's the experiences, it's the memories that we create, it's the love, and I've had so many shared experiences with so many people, and this is why when you come here or we are in groups or sessions, my perspective based on the things that I've experienced and what I know spiritually changes the way you look at it. And it's so interesting to see how peaceful people get when at first they come in and they're sometimes very guarded, okay, because they don't know what to expect, okay. And guys, I'm very authentic and I'm very funny, okay, because again, I've experienced a lot of life, and your sense of humor is a saving grace, okay, and it's not in an irreverent way. It's because we have to learn to laugh at ourselves, and we're all ignorant of stuff. Not everybody knows everything. This is a constant evolution. Even I had a situation where I was in a car accident. I was laid up for 6 months, and so I was off the grid. I wasn't out there like I normally am. And so, when I did get back out there, everything had changed, especially after COVID. A lot of places are closed now. A lot of things don't exist anymore. And so for me, it was even like, which I'm good at this, okay, but going out and seeing who's who and what's what out there, and just showing up to stuff just to get inspired myself, But when you're with me, okay, and you're in my peaceful space, okay, it disarms you, okay, it feels comfortable, okay, there's comfort there, but you can't just, live here, okay, it's to help you. Again, like the definition said, a state of physical or mental ease from pain, worry, or suffering. And that's what people feel when they're in my energy or space, because, I understand. And I'm, it's nothing bad has ever gone on here. And so that's what you fill up while you're in these places. It's a place of respite. And so that when you go back to your house, and you go back to your life, and you go back to your situations, you're seeing it from a very different perspective, and that's where we can start creating solutions, and we can start creating new and manifesting new things. Yeah. So our comfort zone, whether that's good or bad, it can be both, and this is why when I'm with people, then this is why we stay in, shitty situations sometimes. Not because it's good, but because it's familiar. I understand fucked up. I understand dysfunctional. And we think we're able to navigate that or control it. And the reality is you can't. It'll consume you. It just pulls you down. So the comfort I'm talking about is things that make you feel better, things that fill you up. That's good, because we need, when we go out there, to be full and rested and open to the things that the universe is trying to show us. I mean, guys, I can even make a trip to the grocery store an adventure, okay? Because in the morning I make my little to-do list, and the universe is like, aw, bless her heart, because they got another plan for me, okay? So I might need things from the store, but they also show me things along the way. They're like, oh, you should stop in there. I stopped in this little coffee house the other day because the universe said, hey, you haven't been in there yet. Why don't you go in and see what that's about? So I toddled in there. It was on my way, and so I just say yes. I say yes. I just show up. I don't mind, because I'm not afraid of new things. It excites me to see new things and what other people are up to, and, where people are getting together at, and it was just funny because, my to-do list, okay, that's what got me out of the house, okay, but once I'm out there, the universe has other plans, or I'm in the grocery store, and, there's just some beautiful little light, bright person who might need some encouragement, or I just smile, or they smile at me, and it's just an opportunity to connect. So you can, my comfort zone is much bigger than a lot of people's, but trust me, guys, that came through practice, okay? And even after I had my car accident and COVID and all those things, Even I felt uncomfortable out there because it wasn't familiar. See, I'm used to going to places and meeting people, but they're familiar places sometimes, or certain zones. Okay, for instance, the music world, okay, that Jared is in. Okay, that's familiar for me. Okay, I know that. I know that zone. I know the protocol in that zone. I know who's in that zone. I know how to come correct in that zone. And so when somebody came out here and moved it all around, even people like me are feeling wonky. Okay, and so it takes practice. It's a practice. It's not something you just get. Peace takes effort. Okay, so how do we get peace? Well, we remove everything that is not of peace, whether that's in us or outside us. That when we create peace, that radiates. Okay, and so I encourage lots of people to step out of what makes you uncomfortable. And it's just kind of interesting because the best way to ask yourself that question, sitting with it, okay, is what is it that I'm afraid of? Or what is this feeling? Why am I uncomfortable? Ask yourself that. What is the fear? What is the thing that's stopping me from stepping out into these new places? Okay, and then I ask myself, well, where did I learn that from? Like how was I taught that? Because we've been conditioned, guys. Whether it's by our own people or all these things going on in the world, and again, once you step through some of those things, you see that that's not true. Okay, and but if we're just staying that with those blinders on and that limited perspective, you're not going to see anything new, and so so that's kind of what I had for us tonight. So every new experience reminded me that my world wasn't as small as I thought it was. Even as a kid, I knew that one day I'm gonna move away from here. Okay, and so I spent a lot of time at the library. I spent a lot of time educating myself about things I didn't understand. That's not everybody did that. Okay, but that's what I did, because I always loved learning new things, because I didn't want to be ignorant and I didn't want to be naive, because that got my ass kicked. Okay, so the more I knew, I realized that knowledge is power. But the bigger thing is knowledge in action, okay? Putting action behind it. Like when I was 12, I worked at a local beauty shop. I went in there because I needed to make my own money to buy clothes and things, because, my family, I had to wear what they bought me. And I liked that freedom that came with having money, okay? And so anyway, so I started working at the local beauty shop. I was a nerd, okay? Boy, they buffed and shined me, cut my hair, colored it. Oh my God. By the time I was 14 years old, I looked like Farrah Fawcett. I had gay men taught me how to wear makeup. I learned how to interact with clients as the receptionist. So that village taught me all kinds of things. So that was a comfort place for me. It was a comfort place for me. I worked there for a long time, part-time, throughout my teens and early 20s, because it was familiar, and it was a place where I was free from pain or worry, and there was always somebody new to meet and things to see. So it was in this cute little, it was kind of like Queen Latifah's beauty shop, and it was just such a fun gathering of all kinds of smattering of humanity in there, but a lot of people don't get that experience, and so again, we have to push ourselves into realizing that we don't know it all, and that's okay, because ignorance is curable, and you can't just wait for somebody to give you information. We have to be willing to remain teachable, So, I'm here to encourage people to live larger. That comfort zone can actually be very small. And again, when you expand your comfort zone, everything changes. Lots of new things appear. You start building confidence, okay? So you're not going out there scared of what's going on. You're out there confident. And the more you experience things, you realize there's very little risk. involved. And then you get to see the God moments that are happening around you. You know, that inspired thing. Again, my to-do list, I leave wiggle room because I know that, you know, it might be longer in the grocery store because I might run into somebody, or, you know, have some cool thing happen on the way home, or, you know, so I don't pack my schedule and calendar full because I like to leave space for the universe to send me on whatever adventure that I need to see today, you know. Another thing for me is driving. I love driving. Okay, for me that's a freedom. Okay, so I don't even have to drive anywhere. I'll go around a giant block, or but it's just, you know, again, that's a place where I can create this essence or feeling of freedom, you know. You don't necessarily have to have a destination in mind. I also love nature. I love sitting in nature and watching you know, watching the animals because they're messengers to me. You know, so see what appears. Like we had this little bunny rabbit, okay? And that's what we're talking about. Sometimes fear is the thing that's limiting us, you know, and that fear tends to color everything outside that with that fear. You know, and it's not, you know, fear is another acronym for it, is false evidence appearing real. And when you step through the fear, quite often, is when you find out, well, that wasn't so bad. It wasn't as scary, you know, as I thought it was. And the more you do that, the more you practice. And this is a practice, guys. Okay, I've been practicing this for years. And this is why all the classes I do support the tools that go along with how to sit with things, how to, you know, how to see yourself, you know, how to be self-aware, you know, and how do we affect the world out there, you know, but we have to be in a good place in order to, you know, affect people in a positive way, you know. So these are just skills that we don't necessarily have, but those are the blocks in the road for the universe manifesting new things in our world, you know. So our job is to be the change, to go first, look at ourselves first, and then where can we apply our talents and energies out here in the world. You know, we all have jobs. Doesn't mean that it's your, you know, your career, okay? A career is really just a series of jobs you've done that give you an expertise in a certain area. And, you know, so again, you know, we all are interacting with people at our job, but that's familiar, you know, too. So, you know, and those people aren't necessarily all our friends. I mean, it's people we spend a lot of time with, you know, but again, you know, we have these little zones all over the place. And, you know, some people, it's get up, go to work, go to, you know, come home, go to bed, you know, they're on this hamster wheel, you know, and I lived that, okay. I did like basically 3 things, you know, went to work, went out, went home, you know, rinse and repeat. So, and that's a rut, guys. That can become a rut very quickly, and it limits your world. It makes it very small. And so we're trying to connect. We're trying to reach out and connect. And I know that we're all feeling a little some kind of way about it, but even our thinking can get isolated, okay? You know, we've been told or taught certain things our whole life, okay? And I have to tell you, it's a very difficult day when you realize that a lot of the things you bought into were a lie, okay? I help people through awakening to truth, whether that's through a death or some big change in their life. You know, it's a difficult day to realize that, you know, and there's a grief process with that too, you know, but when we change how we see it, everything changes. And we have to be willing to remain teachable, to be open to new ideas and new information, okay? That doesn't mean I'm going to adopt it, but I just want to know that perspective so that, you know, we can find some common thread that connects us together. That's the goal. So yeah, so let's identify our comfort zone and ask yourself, let's sit with that, you know, look up the word comfort and zone, and what are your comfort zones? Where do you feel, you know, safe and familiar, and why don't you want to leave it? Okay. So ask yourself, what makes me uncomfortable thinking about doing this thing? Is it because something's harmful? Or is it because something's unfamiliar? Okay. And again, this was funny. So one time I had somebody who was going to be meeting me where Jared was performing at this place. And they called me from the car and they said, "Where are you at?" And I said, "Well, I'm on my way." I said, "Jared's already in there setting up. So why don't you just go on in?" They're like, "Oh no, I don't go in bars alone." I go, "It's not okay." Jared's in there. You're not alone. There's all kinds of other people in there. Okay, anyway, I said, to be honest with you, the parking lot is more dangerous than you going in that bar by yourself. Okay, because there's all these homeless guys out there who are knocking on your windows looking for money. I go, so I'm just saying, but that's a limiting thing. So how many times has this person never gone somewhere by themselves because they were afraid to be in a bar or a club alone? Okay, now you don't have to go there by yourself the first time. Maybe I go with you, or you ask a friend to go with you. Go with. A lot of the environments that I had to go into, I had Jared, or I had a partner in crime. I had a friend that was willing to do those things. But again, I'm not afraid to go anywhere by myself, really. But that takes practice, guys. Nobody's good at that right away. Okay, but it's also built in wisdom. Okay, I've been places. I've done some things. I've seen some things. Okay, and so I understand the protocols in places that a lot of people wouldn't never venture into. Okay, and I know how to come. I know how to come corrected into some of these environments. There's certain rules, like corporate has rules. Certain environments have different rules that go on in there, and so you want to come correct. And you don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing. Okay, but that takes practice. Okay, so let's ask ourselves those questions. Is it because something's unfamiliar? And that, nobody knows everything, guys. You don't know until you've done it. And then you can say, yes, I like that. No, I didn't like that. But it also allows you to go back and reflect on, and building your courage and encouraging you to try more new things, or go into, or even think differently. Look stuff up. We have all this information, but that doesn't mean it's accurate. Go into your local library. Make a list of things you want to learn more about. Go back to the origins of things. That's where I start, because a lot of things have been reappropriated, misappropriated. What it meant originally is not what it means now. There's a lot of words that people use purposely to generate emotion or reactions. So again, the more you know, the more you know, and the less you can be deceived. So knowledge is power, but knowledge applied knowledge is wisdom. And so you're harder to deceive when you're confident and you are open to learning and doing new things. So that's kind of what I had tonight. So I've got a public channeling event I'm going to be putting on the books for August. There's still spaces, guys, if you want to have your own private party. Nothing's more fun than being in my energy and spending a couple of hours with your posse of people, humans, and I bring the rest of them, okay? Nothing is funnier than hearing all those messages and stories and cool things in that evening. And that way you all come away inspired together. You all heard the same thing. So, when your friend says, I had a dream, you're like, oh, I know what that means, And so you guys have your own little village that can continue to support each other. So it's so much fun to come in and just get this unique perspective from not only me, but from, our universal helpers, that ancestors, relatives, that are like, oh, don't do that. Don't do what I did, okay? I mean, they come clean finally, okay? Way better than they did when they were alive. And they got a lot to say. They have wisdom to share because they don't want you struggling or suffering. Especially if they taught you that, okay? I've had grandparents go, oh my God, I was so ignorant of some things, and I'm giving you permission to stop doing that, okay? You're not going to hurt my feelings or disappoint me. You live your life. Life is about experience. It's about joy and love, and, this is a limited time that we're here. So let's not make our comfort zone a jail cell. Okay? And if it's uncomfortable, then let's change it. We're grown. We can do that. And your children are looking at you going, what are you doing? Okay? There were times my son would look at me and go, Mom, what are you doing? I said, I don't know today. But again, guys, that's where we get respite, when we have our comfort zone. things that make me feel comfortable are what fill me up so that I can go out in this world and say yes to the adventure. Okay? So let's do it. Let's be more adventuresome. If you need a partner in crime, I have events. I'm always posting where I'm at somewhere, and I'm going to be doing a lot more outside things. We have our Serenity Sunday this Sunday. So if you want to come and get inspired and meet some cool people, join us from 1 to 5 on Sunday. It's an open house, come and go thing. We have a little patio out here where we can hang, depending on the weather. I heard it might rain. But again, guys, when you meet each other, when you look at, when you meet Denise, or you meet Kathy, or you meet Kim, you're like, wow, they're cool folks, And so when you come to those public events, they're fun. But when you bring your own group, that's fun too. So, yeah, we're all the same. We're all the same. We like to think we're different, and that's when we find those common threads. When we're out there and we meet new people, and we have more in common than not, okay? So don't let that stop you. So what is keeping you from going and experiencing something outside your comfort zone? When I was younger, I thought I knew it all. So I was stuck in what I thought I knew, and I was not receptive to anybody else's input. All right? That made me obnoxious, okay? Because I thought until I didn't know it all, okay? And that was a tough time, when you wake up and realize you don't know what you're doing, We've all experienced that, I actually had a boss who would out you publicly about your ignorance, okay? He was such an asshole. But he wasn't doing, well, his methods sucked, okay? But sometimes people need that. I needed that. I thought I knew it all, and he refused to let me have that. He's like, yeah, not today. One day I raised my hand in a meeting, and I was probably like in my 19, 20, early 20s, and I raised my hand, and he said, Marianne, do you have something to say, or you just want to hear yourself talk? He wasn't wrong, okay? But I was like, what an asshole. Oh no, he was absolutely correct. Okay, but I couldn't see that then, okay? I just thought Tom was a dickhead. Anyway, that's again, guys, we've had so many messengers and helpers in our life. Whether it's a boss at work or, some just random person out there. We have a village, but it's not what you think, okay? We're connected to each other. If you have met me, we all take a piece of each other away with that, So you got Marianne in your pocket, I have clients that go, what would Marianne say? Okay, well, that's a loaded question. But again, if you spend enough time with me, you learn, and you've followed me on here, you hear some of my Marianneisms, one of my favorites is, I've never seen a hearse dragging a U-Haul, okay? So lighten your load. Stop buying useless crap. Let's use our money to create experiences or to, help people. Like, really. How much useless shit do you need? Your kids don't want it, okay? Testimonies, okay, how many of you guys have cleaned out a relative's house? They thought these things were so important, guys, when they were alive. And now that they're on the other side, they're watching you have to go through the things they would not make a decision about. And they feel bad about that, okay? You're grieving and having to go through all this stuff. Okay, just so you know, nobody wants your stuff. And if they do, give it to them now. Let's depart with these things while we can tell the story about it and ask somebody, like I asked my son, Jared, do you want this? And I'll tell him the story about it, okay? And I'll say, do you want this? He goes, no, Mom. I go, okay. And so we have the giveaway. Well, I donate things, lovingly releasing it so that somebody else can enjoy it or somebody else can use it. Yeah, hoarding is the biggest block to abundance. Okay, how much do you really gotta have? Okay, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. But anyway, comfort zone, it can be this big or it can be this big. Okay, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you are no matter where you go. Because you know why? It lives in you. My safe place is here. Okay? And I take that everywhere I go. So, I can't wait to see you guys. So, who's here? I mentioned a few people. Oh my gosh, Jackie. Hi, Jackie. Thanks for joining me. Hi, Mary. Jack, how you doing? I'm just so excited about all these new things that you're doing. Hey, Kristen. Good to see you. And you're beautiful too. Hi, Shannon. Hi, Angela. Hey, Kelly. Ashley. Denise. Aw, it's good to see you. Yeah, you know, guys, I would love to see you in person, okay? Just share an energy and some giggles, okay? We're funny, okay? I have to tell you, people who've been there and done things, you know, sense of humor is a lifesaver. Some of this stuff is absolutely fucking ridiculous, okay? And again, I don't, yeah, that's yours. That ain't mine. I already been there, done that. You know, but now we can laugh about it because I've made a lot of decisions in my ignorance. Hey, Kim. Hi, Kathy. It's so good to see you guys. I'm so glad you found me. And, Kristen says, I need more of you in my life. You have helped change me for the better. You know, guys, it's like, you know, you're just looking out one window. Okay, where I live, there's 1,000 windows, okay? And so we're taking your little head, and I'm saying, okay, come on over here. We're going to see it like this. Now, I'm not telling you this is what you have to believe. I'm just showing you another perspective. And the minute you change how you look at it, you're like, oh my God. And all these ideas start to come to you, or you see then how you could do this differently. It's not magic. That's how the universe works. When we change how we look at it, everything starts to change. And then when you start to change, it starts to radiate around you. Okay? Other people get inspired, or other people go away. Some people don't like when people change because you're in that comfort zone, see? And so if you leave their usual and customary, and you leave, then they're down there by themselves. And so you're the bad guy for leaving. Guys, we can't stay in things that aren't good for us. Okay, that's not healthy. And again, people are either going to be inspired and want to come along, or they're not. And that's okay too. You know, God bless you on your journey. You know, and together we created something, and we'll always, you know, have that. We'll always have that, good, bad, or otherwise. Okay. So anyway, hey, Rudy, you know what I mean. I didn't see what you wrote first. I'll have to look at it when I hang up. Hey, Rudy. Hey, Robert. Good to see you. It's so good to see you guys. Oh, we're all the same and different. Exactly. And that's the beauty of it, guys. Okay, I've had experiences you haven't had. You've had experiences I haven't had. You know, when we share these, you know, perspectives, or we just talk to each other, you come to find we have more in common than we don't. And we can learn from someone else's wisdom that came very hard earned, okay? But again, sometimes we don't want to know what we don't know. What you don't know, you don't know. And you don't know until you don't know. Well, that was a word salad. Anyway, yes, exactly. We're all the same but different. You know, again, when we look at behavior, that's a symptom of where people come from. You know, and when you understand yourself and you go through your own bag of things, it helps you be more compassionate with other people. I understand why they're doing what they're doing. It doesn't mean I'm going to let them have bad behavior over here, but that shared understanding creates a healing. It can create a healing. You know, I'm not hating you because somebody made you this way, but what can we do? Are you willing? If somebody's willing to do something differently, I will cheer them on. You know, I'll show them the tools. I'll dust them off and show them how to use them. You know, and send them on their way to explore their life with new ideas and new things. That's my role as an elder now. So let's do that. You guys are awesome. So thank you for following me. If you want to schedule some time, one-on-one, I do that virtually or in person. But if you want to give me a call, my phone number is on this post. It's on my website, MaryAnnGoldweber.com. If you go to the services page, it gives you a much more comprehensive understanding of what I do. I do these workshops in other environments like corporate or in different service industries, you know, to help people learn how to really help people. But you can't help anybody if your cup's not full. You know, so I want to leave you the fun quotes about comfort zones. Okay, I found these hilarious because I love quotes. Okay, you ready? A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. Right? You weren't built to live in your house and exist. Right? So here's the next one. Smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. Hardship develops us. Guys, that's where you build resilience. You know, I've hit myself in the head with a hammer. I've done those things, and you learn from it. So you take the lessons and you let the experiences go. But that's a process too, okay? Better the devil you know than the devil you don't, okay? This one is interesting because this is what keeps people in bad places, okay? I know this devil, okay? But that doesn't mean he's not going to hurt me, okay? And you can't control other people. So that the better the devil you know than the devil you don't. I thought that one was very interesting. And again, nothing ventured, nothing gained. You know, guys, it's not going to ding dong your door like the pizza guy. And all he's delivering is pizza, okay, and shitty food. Okay, if you really want a meal, go to the grocery store and cook one, buy the stuff to cook one, or go to a restaurant so you can create an experience. You know, but you can't just keep getting the stuff delivered to your door, okay? The universe wants you to go out and have a meal, or let somebody cook for you. Have a potluck. You know, but we can't do that from the comfort of our couch, okay? Because pizza is not good for... This is my steak and hot dog class I talk about. Yeah. Can't eat hot dogs every day. Pretty soon the universe thinks all you like is hot dogs. So, yes, let's try something new. Let's say yes to those things that pop in your head. If the universe offers me a suggestion, I go do it. I do. Okay? And I just show up. And it's not even about that. They tell me things to do even in my own environment. Okay? But again, you know, comfort is a good thing, but it can also be limiting. So, you know, if your comfort isn't just making you comfortable and safe and okay, and you're afraid to leave it, then it becomes a prison, okay? And isolation is one of the most dangerous things for a human, because when you have only your own thinking, you're never wrong, okay? And sometimes it can actually get to a place where it's delusional. So we do need other people to keep us sane. Okay, you don't have to agree with them. It's just having those other perspectives and energies inspire us. So anyway, all right, I love you guys, and call me, schedule some time, book a party with your friends. Okay, school's almost going to start. All the kids are going to go back to college. So, you know, and my teacher friends, okay, they're going to be going back to the classrooms. So why don't we do a party before the weather's shitty and, you know, we're back into winter again. But I love that anyway. But, yeah, schedule some time. And I love you. If you ever get anything out of these things and you want to buy a gift certificate for someone, I can give it to you, or we can use it for someone in need. Or you can just donate on my Venmo. Throw me a couple bucks. It keeps everything going here. So I'm grateful for all of you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Keep the peace. Pray for our world. And I'll see you on the flip side.